Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Avatar: The Way of Water, starring Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver, Stephen Lang, and Kate Winslet, directed by James Cameron. Now, welcome back to James Cameron. I did review his previous work, including the first Avatar, back in 2019. Before his produced Terminator: Dark Fate came out, and I did go to this one twice. With first time with this shirt on. That's Avatar, in case if anybody doesn't realize that. And I remember the first time. Well, I'll talk about it in the show, but the second time was because I had to take notes for it. The first time was to experience the movie as is. So let's get into this movie and see how this goes. The movie opens with Chief of the Amatakaya clan leader Jake Sully, returned by Sam Worthington, and his wife Neytiri, returned by Zoe Saldana, having two sons and two daughters over the decade, one adopted. We'll get there. Since we last saw them, one son is Netium, and the other is Loak, and one of the two daughters is born from Grace's avatar, as she is adopted, named Kiri, played by Sigourney Weaver, and Tuck, as they have a friend that is a human named Spider, as they live peacefully. And the other scientists on Pandora, like Norm, returned by Joel David Moore, until the day the Sky People return to Pandora, as they take over the place and burn everything. As this opening is a nice setup to know the rest of the Sully family are up to, and these are beautiful characters and a family, I'll say. 1 year later, Colonel Miles Quaritch, I think that's his name, I forget how you say it, returned by Stephen Lang, comes by in an avatar body and learns more from his memory and learns about the enemy known as Jake Sully. And I like that Stephen Lang comes back without any explanation whatsoever, as he was a badass villain like last time. Meanwhile, Jake and Neytiri go with the Na'vi out to the train and blow up to grab some weapons, while the lookout is Netium and Loak, as they get attacked by some Sky People. And as they come in while the two Sully boys aren't dead, but yet, spoiler alert, one of them will die at the end. I won't say who yet, but we'll get there. They get back, and as they get back, Jake grounds the two boys, while Neytiri tells Jake that he's too hard on Netium. Meanwhile, Quaritch gives the same damn speech as he did in the first film when we were introduced to him, which was an interesting choice, I guess. But don't get me wrong, this movie is very pretty to look at. But when we get to their new home later on, I'll comment on how it looks, as I have some things to say about it. Spider doesn't remember who his father is, as he doesn't really want to when we move on to Quaritch getting to base, as he meets General Ardmore, played briefly by Edie Falco, as he goes on a hunt after Jake the hard way, as Quaritch says, outstanding, and a couple of pieces of dialogue, as well as the score, felt like a repeat of the first movie, which probably not the best choice in my opinion. Quaritch looks for Jake, while Spider takes Loak, Kiri, and Tuck to him in the forest, as they get to a forbidden place behind Quaritch, and they're going to regret that, and I'll explain why in the next segment. Quaritch takes Loak, Kiri, and Tuck hostage and captures Spider, and we learn during this scene that Spider is Quaritch's son Miles Jr., as he's with Quaritch for half the movie, and we sometimes get shots of an eclipse on what was that shot about, as it sometimes shows repeatedly, as we move on to Jake and Neytiri to the rescue, as quite a few of Quaritch's soldiers are taken down by both Jake and Neytiri, and Quaritch knows it's Jake and Neytiri, as they save Loak, Kiri, and Tuck. As this piece of action was pretty fun, but it won't be prolonged like the one at the end of the movie, and I'll get there when I get there. While the forest is great to look at in IMAX 3D, that was my first viewing, was in IMAX 3D. And if you ever want to see this movie at all, see it in IMAX 3D. That's the best way to watch it, in my opinion. Even if you don't realize if it's 3.5 hours, and yes, it's a long movie, but let's move on. Spider tries to escape the soldiers, and they torture him while Jake and Neytiri have no choice but to move to a different location and get banished from their culture and land and fly away from there, which I'm going to miss that particular land as they arrive to an unknown location, which is a water location. And they're introduced to Tonorari, played by Cliff Curtis, and Rolnal, played by Kate Winslet after Titanic. And their sons Aonong and Rockstone and daughter, let me see if I'm saying this name right. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Sireya? I don't know if I'm saying that right, but please forgive me if I said that wrong. As Jake talks about keeping his family safe, as they say they can stay in their village as the Sully kids learn how to swim like the other race can. And in IMAX 3D, it was absolutely gorgeous to look at, as it was amazing to look at the point. It impressed the hell out of me, depending on how I feel about the movie. I'm buying this in 4K for how beautiful this movie looks. Quaritch takes Spider on a mission as they climb on trees, and Quaritch grabs a flying creature like the way Jake did in the first film, while the Sully kids practice running on a sea creature, or does Jake, so as does Jake, and both fail miserably. And Kiri connects with the sea creatures, and she successfully learns with Tuck. Meanwhile, Loak has a crush on Sireya. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Please forgive me. And their chemistry is well done by director James Cameron, as he can make this movie have heart, and the new world looks fantastic in 3D or in 4K, while one of the sons of the ruler of the new world, Anong, along with his friends, bully around Kiri and call her a freak, while the two brothers stand up for Kiri and have a fight, and Jake hears about it and forces Loak to make peace, and as he does, Loak goes hunting with Anong and go to an island where they ditch Loak and almost gets killed by a predator, which I think is some kind of whale. I couldn't tell you what it was until a giant whale, bigger than the one that attacks Loak, saves his life from drowning. And the peril in this scene felt real, sure, as Loak and the whole whale, have a beautiful relationship for the rest of the movie as he tries to save his life for something stuck on his fin that was put by the sea people. And this was the scene that showed in the mid-credits of the first Avatar when it was re-released earlier this year in IMAX 3D. And yes, I did go back to see the first one in IMAX 3D earlier, so let's just move on. As the whale, I'm going to call Outcast, because he comes back into the movie as the audience learned he is an outcast, and that was a beautiful scene to look at in IMAX 3D. Kiri is upset as Jake talks with her about how she and Aowa speaking to her from its heartbeat, and this scene is heartbreaking. And kudos to Sigourney Weaver for giving me the heartbreak because of the move, as I know what that's like. Jake learns Loak is missing and Anong is to blame for it, but Loak blames himself for it as he returns, and he brought shame to the Sully family, which is again heartbreaking. Loak goes to Outcast and swims like with the whale some more, as it makes me think this is a great looking movie. When we get to the underwater sequences, for sure, Sireya takes the other kids to the spear tree in the evening as Kiri plugs in her tail and sees herself with Grace, as she's the daughter of Grace, as I get the impression this movie is about family, as she drowns for a second and is having a coma, while the next day Ronal comes in to heal as Norm arrives for a brief few minutes to try to, but he does nothing, while Ronal successfully heals Kiri as she wakes up and cries, and Quaritch flies with Spider as General Ardmore gets people on the boat named Scoresby, along with a marine biologist named Dr. Garvin, to invade some other islands on Pandora. and shooting sea creatures to death while Spider feels terrible about it, while we see everyone in the island where the Sully family and ask where the Sully family are at visiting their whales as they tell the stories of what happened to them in the past year. And they meet up once a year, and I love the production design and set decoration of this movie, particularly in 3D, as this movie looks amazing. Jake learns Quaritch and the Sky People are looking for him while burning one village down after another, while Loak asks Outcast why is he an outcast, and goes inside the whale's mouth and learns he's an outcast because he got his people, not whales, but people killed. And all the kids get in trouble by Tanawari and Ronal about the story of Outcast, while Jake and Natiri get involved and talk with Loak, who gets in a ton of trouble throughout the movie as is, while he talks with Syria, and she tells him she sees him like she loves him as Quaritch and the Sky People go after whale as a tracker and gets them out of the water and kills them with a heart-pounding sound and pokes the one Ronald loves and kills it up as James Cameron is a perfectionist. But is this movie perfect? No. It's 3 hours and 12 minutes plus 20 to 25 minutes of trailers. That's 3.5 hours, as this movie is too long at the point when I saw this in IMAX 3D. It gave me a headache from wearing those glasses for that long of a time. Quaritch and Scoresby drill a hole in the top of the whale's mouth, while the villagers, along with Ronell, see her whale, aka her spring sister, is dead, as Jake and Natiri feel guilty about it, and they want to go to war, and Jake talks with them out of going to war because he wants to save themselves and their families' lives. And Loak goes to Outcast to save his life, while the other children go after him to save his life, and sees Outcast has one of those tracking devices on his fin. And the Sky People are coming as Jake and Natiri decide to fight with the sea creatures, and the villagers against the Sky People, as their boats are coming to as Quaritch sees the Sully kids, and they fight with their sea creatures, but the Sky People have submarines to find the children, and as they do, Quaritch captures Tuck, Rhea, and Loak, getting tied up and on the rail while Spider comes in to help them, but Quaritch sends him back while Jake and the villagers come in and stop as his kids are bait, and Outcast saves Tuck, Rhea, and Loak and are saved by Outcast and beat up and kill the soldiers as the climax is about to begin, and it's prolonged. When Jake and the villagers start attacking the Sky People with Outcast and the kids, and these scenes are what is holding the movie up, as some of these scenes could be cut out of the movie as it's a really long movie. The battle begins with a bang as Jake goes after Quaritch and runs out of bullets, and while Kiri takes a submarine and its soldiers out, and Spider destroys the ship of the Sky People as it bumps on land and sinks the ship the Sky People are on. And how can you not think of Titanic when the ship gets scraped and sinks in the water? As I couldn't help but think of it while Outcast sinks Scoresby in the water while his arm is cut off. And how did this get away with the PG-13 rating, which bugged me half to death? Natium and Kiri save the other kids, and Natium and Loak go after Spider, while Tuck and Kiri get captured by Quaritch and throws Syria in the water. Bad mistake for Quaritch's move, I'll say. Loak, Natium, and Spider escape while Loak is shot by and Loak, Syria, and Spider get Natium on land, where Jake works on saving his life, while he and Natiri are sad about Natium is unfortunately dead, while Jake hears Quaritch saying he has Kiri and Tuck, and Spider takes him to the ship, the sinking ship, I'll say, and Natiri on the ship to destroy Quaritch once and for all, while Loak wants to go with them to kill Quaritch, as he does which is dumb on his part, and this climax goes on way too long. Jake and Spider get on the ship, and Jake blows up one of the flyers and kills off the Sky People as Neytiri enters and fights along with Jake. At one point, Neytiri's bow breaks and Tuck is released by Jake, and Quaritch has Kiri as a hostage and forces Jake to cuff himself, while Neytiri has Spider as a hostage, and Quaritch has no choice but to drop his knife as Spider and Neytiri, Kiri, and Tuck escape, and Jake and Quaritch have a brutal fight as Neytiri drops Tuck by accident, I'll say, in the ship, as that was stupid on Neytiri's part, I'll say, going in a sinking ship as Jake beats Quaritch. It doesn't kill him, as Loak comes in to save Spider, and Kiri goes underwater, so Loak saves Jake by making him breathe his last breath and swim to the outside as they almost drown, but Outcast saves their lives. Da 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 da. And Jake says, I see you to Loak. Kiri saves Neytiri and Tuck by getting some pretty fish to follow her and gives the cape to Neytiri, as that was introduced earlier in the film, and they swim to the outside world and meet with Jake and Loak and Spider, saving Quaritch, and puts him on land and ditches him while he flies away, which is amazingly hilarious because he chooses to be with the Na'vi and not with his own father. So that kind of amused me. Spider comes back to the Sully family and they have a funeral for Netium in the water as they swim him to an energy tree, and Jake thinks of when he was first born, as Jake and the Sully family are planning on moving out the next day, and Tonowari, and Ronald tell him he's one of the sea people now, as they're accepted by them. And Jake and Neytiri plug in their tails on an tree underwater that suffocated Kiri earlier, and sees Netium as a little boy as a memory, and see their home. And the climax did take too long, but it is beautiful. It is a beautiful movie to look at. It's just too long. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 8.3 out of 10. Just as good as the original, despite the movie is too long, as James Cameron cannot make short movies anymore, as he repeats some of the dialogue and score as it felt repetitive. But I do like the old characters as well as the new characters. It's very beautiful to look at, as the best way to see this is in 3D or IMAX 3D, as this plot is no different from the first film, as it gave me a headache for wearing the glasses for 3.5 hours. The movie's production design and set decoration makes this movie a great looking movie, as this is a recommendation, but as you need to see this movie in 3D and IMAX 3D, but as long as you don't get the headaches, I'll say. But be prepared for the 3.5 hour runtime, as you'll smile like I did as the graphics in this movie. So I'd like to thank you guys for coming back with me to Pandora and Avatar. And until then, and whenever James Cameron makes a third film, this family is our fortress.